My cousin moved her family into my aunt and uncle's house without asking, then assumed I'd watch her kids for free while they took a vacation I wasn't even invited to. I left at 5 a.m. to go camping with friends. When they found out, they called CPS on me for abandoning kids I never agreed to watch. I didn't plan on staying long. That was the first lie I told myself. My name's Rylan. I'm 22, and I just moved back to my hometown in southern Indiana, a place with more cornfields than stoplights. After 4 years of grinding through a data analytics degree, I thought I'd finally be starting a new chapter. Instead, I ended up back in the same creaky farmhouse I grew up visiting on weekends, sleeping in the attic bedroom with the slanted ceilings and the smell of motor oil that never quite goes away. I moved in with my Aunt Lane and Uncle Wes, my mom's older brother and his wife. They were more like parents to me than anyone else after my mom passed when I was 12. They never officially adopted me, but they'd send birthday cards, show up for school plays, and every summer I'd get shipped to their house while my dad floated in and out of halfway homes. So when I needed a place to land after college, they didn't hesitate. "Stay as long as you need," Lane said over the phone. "You've got a home here." At first, I believed her. The plan was simple: couch surf while I job hunted, find an apartment, and get out within a month or two. To my surprise, I actually landed a job pretty fast. A junior data technician gig at a logistics firm 20 minutes away. Nothing glamorous, but solid pay and benefits. I came home the day after I got the offer, dropped my bag by the door, and told them the good news. Wes clapped me on the back. "Look at that. Told you some big shot would want you." Lane even baked a boxed cake, decorated with canned frosting and mismatched candles. But before the night was over, the celebration shifted. Wes opened a beer, sat down with a sigh, and said, "We're real proud of you, kiddo. And, well, now that you've got some income, we were hoping you might pitch in. Just a bit." I blinked. "Yeah, sure. Like groceries." Lane laughed, but it wasn't mean. More like utilities. And maybe help your uncle with a few side jobs. You know, computer stuff for his clients. Wes was a freelance mechanic, the kind that rebuilt transmissions in barns and called it a business. Lately, he'd been modernizing, which basically meant asking me to fix his website or update spreadsheets he barely knew how to open. I hesitated, but I nodded. "Yeah, I can help out." I meant it. I wanted to. But that was the second lie I told myself. And I had no idea how many more were coming. At first, it wasn't that bad. I paid the electric bill 1 month, then the water the next. Lane would thank me with a warm casserole and a side of, "You're such a blessing, Rylan." Wes would grunt something appreciative while tinkering with a carburetor in the garage. It felt manageable, even good, like I was finally contributing to the people who took me in when I had no one else. But it didn't stop there. By the second month, Wes started calling me into the garage more often. It was always something simple. Could I install a security camera for a client? Could I fix the printer? Could I create a parts inventory system that didn't involve napkins and motor oil? I didn't mind the first few times, but then came the late-night texts and weekend requests. "I know you're off, but could you just help me print this invoice?" Would turn into 2 hours of me cleaning up his laptop from whatever sketchy website he'd accidentally downloaded viruses from. Meanwhile, Lane started leaning on me in her own way. She was a substitute teacher who hadn't had steady work in a while, and I noticed she'd stopped asking if I wanted to be reimbursed for groceries. Then came the casual comments, the ones that started to stick. I'd mention looking at apartments in Bloomington or Louisville, and she'd smile tight and say, "Must be nice to think about moving out when the rest of us are trying to keep the lights on." Once, I bought a pair of running shoes on sale, nothing fancy, just something that didn't hurt my feet. I left the box on the kitchen counter by mistake. That night at dinner, Lane looked at them and said, "Hope those shoes help you run away from responsibility." Wes chuckled like it was a joke. I didn't. The worst part was, I started shrinking myself down without even realizing it. I stopped mentioning anything that might seem like luxury. I brought home fast food less often, even though I could afford it. I canceled a weekend trip with some friends from college because Lane had casually reminded me that Wes's tax forms needed organizing, something I never agreed to do, but somehow still became my job. Every time I tried to draw a line, it got washed away by guilt. "Rylan, you've got such a good head on your shoulders," Lane would say when I looked frustrated. "We just don't know what we'd do without you." But it wasn't a compliment. It was a leash. By month 4, I'd saved almost nothing from my paychecks. I was still paying rent and everything but name. Time, energy, bandwidth, all of it going to a household that didn't ask if I could help, but went. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that they needed me. But deep down, I was starting to feel like I had traded one kind of survival for another, and no one seemed to notice that I was the one going under. It happened on a Friday. I remember because it was the first time in weeks I left work early. I told my boss I needed to take care of some family stuff, which was only halfway true. I just wanted a quiet evening. Maybe microwave a burrito, watch dumb YouTube videos, and not hear Wes yell about missing socket wrenches from the garage. But when I pulled into the driveway, there were toys scattered across the front lawn. a pink plastic tricycle, a half-deflated beach ball, a backpack with glitter on the straps sitting on the porch swing. Inside, the noise hit me first. Kids yelling, cartoons blasting, someone's voice shouting, "Where's the damn diaper bag?" I stepped into the kitchen and found Carly, my older cousin, standing barefoot, wiping applesauce off her shirt. Her husband Dane was behind her, sweating through a stretched-out t-shirt while one of their kids shrieked at the top of his lungs over a tablet that had run out of battery. "Oh hey," Carly said brightly, like I was the guest. "Hope it's cool we let ourselves in." Aunt Lane said it was fine. I looked around. The living room was covered in plastic toys, goldfish crackers crushed into the rug, and half-unpacked duffel bags. A kid I didn't recognize, probably one of hers, sat cross-legged on the coffee table, eating string cheese straight from the wrapper like a raccoon. "What is going on?" I asked, blinking. Lane walked in from the hallway, her smile already defensive. "Oh honey, don't look so surprised." Carly and Dane hit a rough patch. The startup Dane was working on folded, and Carly lost some clients. "I thought she was doing interior design," I said, still trying to catch up. "She is," Carly jumped in. "But mostly freelance now. People aren't really paying like they used to. Anyway, we just need a little space to breathe, and you guys have that extra room." That extra room was the storage room where I'd been keeping my computer set up and the only desk in the house. I opened my mouth to protest, but Wes came in next, holding a box. "Already moved your monitor into the attic with the rest of your stuff. Should be all set up." I stood there, stunned. No one had asked. No one had even told me. "Wait," I said. "You moved my... Why didn't anyone tell me they were coming?" "We didn't want to worry you," Lane said. "You've been so stressed lately." That was the moment it hit me. I was never consulted. Not about money, not about space, not about anything. I was just expected to adjust, to accommodate. The next few days were chaos. The kids screamed from sunup to bedtime. Dane took over the garage, claiming he'd help Wes out, but mostly just smoked and watched YouTube on his phone. Carly left dishes everywhere. I couldn't hear myself think in the attic. One night, I found Lane in the kitchen and asked, "So, how long are they staying?" She didn't even look up from the sink. "As long as they need." And just like that, it was decided. I wasn't living with family anymore. I was living in a storm, and apparently, my only job was to hold the umbrella. The first time Carly asked me to watch the kids, it sounded harmless. "Hey, she said, leaning into the attic doorway like we were old pals. "Could you keep an eye on them for like 30 minutes? I just need to run to Walgreens." I glanced at the clock on my laptop. "I've got a project due Monday." "I'll be quick," she said, already walking away. That was the beginning. 30 minutes turned into 3 hours. The Walgreens bag she came home with had a bottle of wine and nail polish in it. That should have been my clue. After that, it became routine. No warnings. No. "Hey, are you free?" Just a shout from downstairs. "Ryan, can you keep an eye on them while I hit the store?" Or "Dane's out and I have to do a client call. They'll be quiet. I promise." They never were. Those kids had no volume control. One of them cried if you said no in any tone above a whisper. The other refused to eat anything that wasn't shaped like a dinosaur. Meanwhile, I was expected to magically pause my full-time job and become a makeshift camp counselor on demand. Weekends were the worst. If I didn't leave the house early, I'd get cornered. "We're just grabbing brunch," Carly would say, jangling car keys. "Back in a bit." And like that, I'd be stuck, 2 toddlers clinging to my legs while I tried to clean up cereal they'd dumped across the floor like confetti. Every time I asked when she'd be back, the answer was soon. Soon never meant less than 4 hours. I tried setting boundaries. I really did. One Saturday, I said, "Hey, I can't babysit today. I've got a deadline." Carly's smile dropped like a mask falling. "Wow. Okay. I'm not a babysitter," I said gently. "You're just on your laptop all day anyway," she snapped. "It's not like you're doing anything that important." The way she said laptop, like it was a toy, like my work didn't matter, stuck with me. Wes and Lane didn't help. If I complained, Wes would say, "They're just kids, You act like it's a prison sentence." Lane would sigh and murmur something about family making sacrifices. Sacrifice. That word kept coming up, but I was the only one doing it. Meanwhile, Carly treated my attic like her personal storage unit. Dane would blast sports podcasts all day and act confused when I asked him to keep it down. The kids left messes I was expected to clean, bowls under the couch, half-eaten snacks in my desk chair. I started keeping my door shut and locked. Not that it helped much. One morning I woke up to the sound of something crashing. One of the kids had wandered into my room, spilled a mug of coffee all over my keyboard, and started crying because I didn't have games on my computer. No one apologized. "Kids get into things," Carly said, shrugging. "Maybe don't leave stuff where they can break it." I was slipping. My bank account hadn't grown in weeks. I couldn't focus on my work. I stopped checking my job boards because I couldn't imagine moving out without guilt eating me alive. I was tired. Not physically, but the kind of tired that sinks into your chest and stays there. Some nights I just lay awake staring at the ceiling, thinking, this isn't what I signed up for. But that didn't matter. What mattered was I kept saying yes. And everyone else seemed perfectly fine pretending I had never said no. It was a Thursday evening when I overheard it. I was walking past the hallway, carrying a laundry basket up to the attic when I heard Lane's voice drifting from the kitchen, bright and excited in a way I hadn't heard in months. And the cabin has this wraparound deck with the prettiest mountain view. Wes is over the moon. I paused. Then Carly's voice chimed in. The pictures look amazing. Are we all driving up together or taking separate cars? All together, Lane said. That way we don't have to take more than one rental. I stood there in the hallway, frozen. Colorado. Cabin. Rental cars. I put the basket down and walked into the kitchen slowly. They stopped talking the second they saw me. What cabin? I asked. Carly blinked. Lane shot a glance at Wes, who suddenly seemed deeply invested in wiping down a mug. Oh, Lane said lightly. Just a little trip we've been planning. Nothing big. Who's going? I asked. She hesitated a beat. Just us, Carly, Dane, the kids, you know, the family. I let that sink in. And me? I asked. Another silence. Then Wes cleared his throat. We figured it'd be better if someone stayed behind. You know, with the kids. I stared at him. You mean Carly's kids? Well, yeah, Carly said, like it was obvious. They're too young for a trip like that. And we figured you'd be the best person to stay back. You're great with them. You already planned this? I asked. My voice sounded distant. Hello. Lane nodded slowly. We were going to tell you this weekend. So that was it. A family vacation I didn't even know existed. Except I did have a role to play. Not as family. As the help. I wasn't asked. I wasn't invited. I was expected. I didn't say anything. Just nodded, turned, and walked back upstairs. My hands were shaking as I dropped the basket onto my bed. They were going to a cabin in Colorado. The same people who said they couldn't afford new tires were going on a mountain retreat, without me. And they had the nerve to leave their kids behind and act like they were doing me a favor. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spin round and round. They didn't see me. Not really. Not as a person. Not as someone with a life or limits or plans of his own. I was just useful. Until I wasn't. I didn't argue. I didn't throw a fit or call them out. I just made a decision, quiet and sharp as a pin. I was done, and they wouldn't see it coming. The week before the trip, I kept my head down. Every morning, I packed a few things into my duffel bag, socks, charger, journal, flashlight, then zipped it shut and slid it under my bed before anyone came up. I told Carly I had a work audit over the weekend. Lane didn't even ask. She was too busy organizing the family trip that I somehow wasn't part of. I told no one the truth. I was going camping. Not alone. With two friends from college, Kyle and Bree. We hadn't seen each other since graduation, but when I texted Kyle about everything, the babysitting, the freeloading, the Colorado trip, he just replied, come breathe. We've got space. Just show up. I hadn't realized how badly I needed that. The night before everyone left, I helped Lane load up the SUV with snacks and blankets and an obscene number of juice boxes. Thanks for stepping up, Ree, she said, stuffing a tote bag into the backseat. We knew we could count on you. I nodded. You've always been so grounded, she added. Right. Grounded like a worn-out outlet no one bothers to replace. That night I didn't sleep much. I kept running the plan through my head. Wake early. Slip out. Leave a note? No. No note. They didn't leave me one when they made the decision without me. At dawn, I tiptoed down the stairs with my bag, my sleeping pad rolled tight under my arm. The house was still, no crying, no clinking dishes, no Lane telling me I looked tired like it was a character flaw. Just silence. I stood for a moment by the front door, listening. Then I opened it and stepped out. The air outside was cool and light. It smelled like grass and dew and freedom. I slid into my car, started the engine, and pulled away. By noon, I was 200 miles away, somewhere near Red River Gorge, where Bree and Kyle had already set up camp. I parked beside their tent, killed the engine, and just sat for a minute, letting the quiet press in. Kyle grinned when he saw me. You look like someone who escaped prison. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was true. The weekend was everything I didn't know I missed. Hiking trails that smelled like pine. Campfire dinners with cheap beer. Lying in a hammock under the stars and talking about everything and nothing. I didn't hear a single toddler scream. No one asked me to fix anything. No one commented on how nice it must be to have free time. By the second night, I felt like someone had lifted 100 pounds off my chest. You're smiling in your sleep, Bree said when I stirred beside the fire. Probably dreaming I don't have to unclog the bathroom for people who treat me like furniture, I muttered. We all laughed. And for the first time in I don't know how long, it wasn't bitter. It was real. I didn't miss them. Not the noise. Not the guilt. not the endless favors disguised as love. I thought stepping away would make me feel selfish, but all it did was make me feel like me again. I got home late Sunday afternoon. The moment I stepped out of the car, I knew something was off. The porch light was still on, even though it was broad daylight. The front door was half open. One of the kids' tiny Crocs lay upside down in the flower bed. Inside, the house was a mess, not the usual clutter. This was frantic. Frantic and angry. Lane stood in the kitchen, her face red, hair frizzed like she'd been crying or yelling, maybe both. Wes sat at the table, arms folded. Carly was pacing, her phone in hand, while Dane stood by the fridge looking like a kid sent to the principal's office. They all turned to me at once. There he is, Carly snapped, voice tight with rage. The great Houdini himself. Where the hell were you? Lane demanded, stepping toward me. I dropped my bag by the door and didn't say anything. You didn't answer your phone, Wes said, quieter but with an edge. We thought something happened. Something did happen, Carly cut in. You abandoned my kids. She said it like I'd left them on the side of a highway. Like she hadn't waltzed out the door without even asking if I'd be around that weekend. I wasn't scheduled to babysit, I said flatly. Carly scoffed. Are you serious right now? You never asked me. You live here, she shouted. We all assumed. Exactly, I said. You assumed. Lane stepped forward then, a new kind of hurt in her voice. We trusted you, Rylan. Those kids could have gotten hurt. What if something had happened? I'm not their parent, I said. I'm not their guardian. I'm not even their babysitter. I'm just the guy you guild into helping when it's convenient. Wes finally spoke, his voice rough. Don't twist this. You knew we needed help. Then you should have planned for it, I said, looking right at Carly. Not dump 2 kids on someone who never agreed to watch them in the first place. Dane muttered something about calling child services. I couldn't tell if it was a threat or a retelling of something they already did. Either way, it stopped me cold. You called CPS on me? I asked. Lane looked away. Carly didn't. You left 2 minors unsupervised, she said. We had to make sure they were safe. I stared at her. My jaw clenched. I could actually feel the blood drain from my face. You went on a vacation, I said slowly, without telling me I'd be responsible for your kids. You left them here. Not me. And now you want to blame me for not stepping into a role I never agreed to? Wes stood up. We're not saying you're a bad person. But this was irresponsible. I let out a bitter laugh. No, I said. What's irresponsible is using someone until they break, then acting shocked when they stop pretending to be okay with it. Lane looked stunned. Carly crossed her arms like she'd just won a lawsuit. Wes shook his head, like I'd let him down personally. There was no apology. No acknowledgement. Just blame. But I didn't fight anymore. I didn't raise my voice. Because I finally saw it clearly. To them, I wasn't family when it mattered, only when it was convenient. And I was done pretending otherwise. The silence afterward wasn't peaceful. It was calculated. Carly stopped speaking to me entirely, except when absolutely necessary, and even then it came out in clipped commands or icy glances. Lane sent long, passive-aggressive texts, laced with phrases like, disappointed in how you handled things, and this isn't the Rylan we know. Wes tried to play neutral, awkwardly knocking on my door one evening with a can of root beer like that would fix the gaping hole they'd all helped tear open. He leaned on the doorframe and said, you know your aunt's heart's in the right place. I stared at him. And Carly, he added, she's just protective. Mother instincts, you know? I didn't answer. Just took the soda and closed the door. That week, I started browsing rental listings during my lunch breaks. Studios. Shared apartments. Anything outside a 50-mile radius of this house. I didn't care if I had to live over a laundromat or share a bathroom with 3 strangers. I just wanted out. Every night, I packed a little more. Not enough to be obvious, but enough to feel like momentum. My sneakers. My good jeans. A pair of headphones I hadn't touched in months. But the push I really needed came from a voice I hadn't heard in a while. Joelle. She was my mom's best friend, technically my godmother, but more than that, really. She'd always treated me like family, without strings, without scorekeeping. She called after one of Lane's texts must have reached her through the grapevine. Hey, baby, she said. Want to tell me what's going on over there? I hesitated. Then I told her everything. I sat on my bed with my phone to my ear and finally unloaded. The guilt. The babysitting. The vacation. The CPS threat. There was silence on the other end for a beat. Then she said, that's not love, Rylan. That's control dressed up as family. My throat tightened. You've been raised to believe that self-sacrifice is the same thing as loyalty, she continued. But it's not. And it's okay. No, it's right to say enough. I feel like if I leave, I'm abandoning them, I said quietly. No, baby, Joelle said, firm now. You've already been abandoned. You've just been too useful to notice. That hit like a freight train. Because it was true. She offered to help with moving expenses if I needed it. Said I could crash at her place for a few weeks if I didn't find something fast. But more than anything, she just listened. No guilt. No shame. Just support. By the time we hung up, I knew what I had to do. I didn't feel scared. I felt like I was finally walking out of a house that had been burning around me for months, and now I was finally heading for the door. I waited until dinner. I figured if they were going to corner me about something again, I might as well beat them to it. Carly had made spaghetti, one pot for everyone, dumped into a giant plastic bowl. The kids were watching cartoons in the other room with the volume too high. Lane was on her phone, scrolling while she chewed. Wes was cracking open a beer. I sat down across from them, heart pounding but voice steady. I'm moving out, I said. Everything stopped. Carly blinked. Lane slowly set her fork down. Wes stared at me like he hadn't heard right. By the weekend, I added. I already found a place. You're what? Lane asked. I'm moving out, I repeated. It's done. First month's paid. Silence filled the room like water flooding in. And then the wave hit. You're joking, right? Carly scoffed. After everything this family has done for you? I met her eyes. You mean the unpaid babysitting? The free tech support? The constant guilt trips? Yeah, I'm done. You're abandoning us, Lane said, voice sharp. That's what this is. No, I said. This is me choosing myself. Finally, Carly stood up, her voice rising with each word. You can't just walk away. Who's going to help Wes in the garage? Who's going to watch the kids when we need a break? You can't just dump it all because you're tired. That's not my problem anymore, I said calmly. It never should have been. You're so ungrateful, Lane hissed, red-faced. We gave you a place to stay when you had nothing. And I gave you everything back, I said. Money, time, my peace of mind. I helped pay the bills. I gave up job interviews to babysit your grandchildren. I stayed when I wanted to go, over and over. And what did I get? No one answered. Not a thank you, I said. Not a single. How are you holding up? Just more needs. More assumptions. More work. Wes finally cleared his throat. We didn't mean to make you feel like that. But you did, I said. Every day. Lane looked like she might cry, but the part of me that used to rush to comfort her, it was gone. I didn't owe her my sympathy anymore, not when she never offered me hers. Carly crossed her arms. So what? You're gonna just leave us high and dry? I'm gonna leave you the same way you left me out of that vacation, I said. Except I'm not asking you to clean up after my kids. Dane, who'd been silent the whole time, muttered, maybe let him go. He clearly doesn't want to be part of this family. No, I said, standing up. I want to be part of a family. But this? This is a chain gang. Wes rubbed the back of his neck and said nothing. Lane sniffled. Carly looked like she wanted to throw something. But no one stopped me. And that told me everything. I didn't expect hugs. I didn't expect them to beg me to stay. But part of me, deep down, still wondered if someone would at least say they were sorry. That I mattered. That I wasn't just some tool they could use until it broke. They didn't. So I walked away. And this time, I didn't look back. My new apartment wasn't fancy. It was a one-bedroom over a laundromat in the next county. The floors creaked. The water heater was moody. The walls were the color of old oatmeal. But it was mine. My boxes. My air. My silence. The first night I slept there, I left my bedroom door wide open. Just because I could. There were no footsteps in the hall. No crying toddlers. No Lane knocking to ask for a small favor. No Carly yelling for backup while she slipped out to go run errands. No Wes asking me to help change a car battery in the rain. Just me. And that silence was everything. On Monday, I blocked Carly's number. Then Lane's. Then the family group text. I knew the messages would come, guilt-laced monologues, backhanded apologies that weren't really apologies, a final attempt to rope me back in. I didn't want to read a single word. I didn't owe them anything. Joelle called a few days after I moved in. I picked up on the second ring. So, she said, you breathing easier? Like I took off a 100-pound coat I didn't realize I was wearing. She laughed. Told you. She sent me a housewarming gift 2 days later, a set of nice kitchen towels and a mug that said "Inno" is a complete sentence. I used it every morning. Still do. I got back in touch with old friends. Real ones. People who didn't just call when they needed a ride or a favor or a babysitter. People who asked how I was doing and actually waited for the answer. Bree sent me a playlist. Cal invited me to another camping trip in the fall. I picked up an old hobby I'd shelved months ago, digital art. Nothing big, just sketching on my tablet at night. It felt good. Like me. I started planning a trip to Europe, something I'd wanted to do since college. Just 2 weeks, maybe 3, somewhere with cobblestone streets and pastries I can't pronounce. I could afford it. That realization still catches me by surprise sometimes. Because now, every cent I earn goes where I choose. Every hour I spend belongs to me. One morning, I woke up and realized I hadn't thought about that house in days. It wasn't hate or anger anymore. It was just distance. Like watching a storm through a rearview mirror, growing smaller and smaller the further I drove away. That was the freedom I didn't know I needed. I used to think being the glue that held people together was noble. But all it ever did was stick me to people who never thought to hold me back. Now, I'm whole. I'm quiet. I'm free. And I swear to myself, I'll never give any piece of that back.